to this afternoon session, and thank you so much for joining us for our 12th day on the bike. Nearly halfway, getting there. Today we're going to be riding the second leg of day 4 on the bikes from Bancroot to Chompon. And I am so pleased to announce that already as a group, we have ridden over 38,000 kilometers. That number just blows my mind. It's massive. And we've also, as a group, raised over $100,000, which I think is just phenomenal, having not even been halfway through. So thank you to everybody on this call and everybody listening to the recording for being part of this. You really are changing the kids' lives and contributing in ways that many of you have been there, can imagine, and those that haven't, we hope that one day you'll be able to join us on a proper, well, I don't want to say proper because I feel like the virtual ride is also proper, but you know what I mean, in Thailand. So today I am joined by two very handsome men, Scott Stein and Vince Sorrenti, who are going to be getting us through our next load of kilometers. So but just before we start, let me tell you a little bit about Vince, but I'm sure most of you know him. He is one of Australia's most successful and popular comics. And do we not all need a bit of comic relief at the end of the week? For the past 2 decades, he has been the entertainer of choice at the nation's leading corporate benefits, sporting, political conferences, and social events. His excellence and experience on stage sees him hosting and speaking at over 200 events per year, and possibly in COVID a little bit less, but a little bit more Zoom. So we will hear from him shortly. Vince's decades-long list of radio and television credits is far too long for me to go into now, but suffice to say he has done it all from Hey Hey It's Saturday in the 1980s to Celebrity Apprentice and Studio 10. He hosted his own show on MTV in the USA and has appeared in every genre of TV from sports to cooking. So Vince has been a massive supporter of Hands and he's emceed many of our events over the years. We are so happy to have him join us and we really look forward to having him as part of this Zoom session. So I am going to hand over to the guys and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the great intro. Couldn't have written it better myself, actually.
I like the good-looking bit.
Yeah, I'll wear that any day.
It wasn't me, which was you. Welcome, everybody, again. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Scott Stein. I'm one of the founding board members of Hands, so got involved with Hands from the very beginning, even before Pete really had the first orphanage built, so which has been great. And I'm on the bike as well, as you can see, trying to get my Ks up for the month, which is pretty exciting. I'm here in the living room in wet, soggy Kurokuro on the beaches, so, which is a bit of fun. And I'm actually really excited to have Vince here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, mate. I'm not pedaling as hard as you are, but I'm feeling the burn in my stomach from that beautiful fish and salad I'm about to eat as soon as this is over.
Yes, that's the good thing about 12 o'clock noon, because you can look forward to the lunch afterwards.
Yeah.
I want to start with, again, I've seen you at numerous conferences, incredible MC, you know, also went to Bangkok with you with the Future of Leadership. But the question I want to ask you is, how did you become a comedian? What was it that kind of got you to want to go in that direction?
I've always loved comedy, and I think that's a big help. I find, you know, people always say, "Oh, how do you remember jokes? How do you recall this? I think people that love comedy tend to do comedy because humour means more to people like me, and I take greater note. So I pay attention when something is funny, or I try and see the funny side of things. But mate, I studied architecture. I didn't. I was not that you can study anything to be a comic, but I was at Sydney Uni doing architecture, and the review is a big part of the architecture degree at Sydney Uni, and like the Footlights reviews in the UK, they produce a lot of entertainers, and many have come out of those architecture reviews, like your Graham Bonds, like Peter Weir, the director, John Dugan, lots of comics, lots of writers. So it just gradually took over my life, Scott. I didn't really plan it. It's just people started sort of paying me to do it, and I thought, well, this is good.
So tell me about that transition, right? Because it sounds like if you're similar to me, I grew up, working class background. The parents wanted me to go to uni, so I went to uni. And it sounds like you kind of went down that similar path. But at what stage did you go, you know what, this comedy, I really like this maybe as a profession over kind of the architecture side?
Yeah, it was pretty gradual, because I had my career planned out. I was in about third year of architecture when the Comedy Store opened, and we'd just done a review, and people said to me, "Oh, there's this new club in town where people get up and beef." I'd never even seen stand-up comedy. I had no idea what it was, and they kind of dragged me down there, and I got up on stage and did some stuff from the reviews. I was so made it. Talk about nerves. I was physically holding my leg because it was shaking. It was, and I had friends in the audience, which made it even worse. If you're going to try it in comedy, go alone in case you die. I didn't die, thankfully, and I remember Rodney Roode, who you may recall. He was the MC that night, and he could see how much I enjoyed it. And he said to me, he said, "You will be a comic for the rest of your life."
Right.
And I went on and finished 3 more years of architecture. But by the third year after that, I was studying, I was working as a comic at night in clubs and travelling, and on weekends I'd go to Adelaide to do a show or to North Queensland. It was really overtaking my life, and I was earning an income out of it. I thought, well, I'm only 20 years old. I might give this a crack for a while, and I did, and it just never looked back.
And how did it go with the parents? Because I would imagine.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because like I came from sort of Italian migrant parents, and it's this whole sort of like work ethic. We've come to the new country, we've built a platform. You need to get on with it, and sort of comedy. Really, that was just. They were very cool. I've got to say, they kind of had the idea, whatever I wanted to do, as long as I was happy, they would abide by it. And architecture was, because all the sort of ethnic families, or the Italians at least, in those days, they were all into building and concreting and sort of like, that kind of work, construction work. So architecture was kind of the really natural, well, the next generation, we're going to have an architect, and that was going to be me, but they got a clown instead.
Well, you always had a plan B, right? Always plan B.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, so you started out doing a little bit with the comedy club and things like that.
But comedy really exploded at that time. To most people, myself included, stand-up comedy was a very new thing. And we're talking 1981 here, early 80s. Most Aussies' impressions of comedy was like going to some RSL club or having a Saturday afternoon smokos, and there'd be some guy come out, my mother-in-law's so fat and all that sort of. It was really old school, sort of, these sort of crusty old guys in their sort of, crinkly suits doing this stuff in clubs. It hadn't changed for years, And they called it new wave comedy at the time because it was really fresh. We swore a lot, which the old timers didn't. So some people called it like punk comedy, it followed the sort of the punk era in the UK as well. So it was just new. And the Comedy Store was the place to be seen in the early 80s, mate. It was the hippest place in Sydney. International stars would drop in. I've met so many celebrities there, national stars too. It was a real place to be, and there was just a great excitement around stand-up comedy, and we all became really well known. Within a couple of years, we were working 7 nights a week. It expanded from the Comedy Store to, there was a different venue every night, and these venues would be packed to the gills. I recorded a comedy album at a place called Trains in Rockdale, of all places. You literally couldn't get into these places. There was queues around the block. It was so hip. It was the it thing, comedy.
And was there? I'd imagine, different industries have different pecking orders, right? Where some of the people are up here, some are here, and then there's the others. Was there a kind of, in those early days, that kind of pecking order? And if there was, where did you sit?
Wow. Yeah, of course there's a pecking order. I mean, look, everyone, the thing about comedy is that different types of comedy appeal to different types of people. So, you know, whether some people might like me, other people might like someone else. But there was a hardcore group of about a dozen of us that were pretty popular and pretty well known. And some guys, you know, released albums and had hit singles. And remember when people had hit singles and became really big stars? I mean, like Ostentatious had that. Australiana, his routine, that was the biggest selling single of 1980. Actually, the biggest selling single of the 80s, full stop. I mean, and so when we went on to, I mean, we were like national celebrities. I mean, like everyone knew our names, and, you know, some of us were making really big money, you know, like album sales, and, you know, people were becoming millionaires. It was just out of control. It was,
especially back then, that would have been amazing.
It was, mate. It was really. I mean, the 12th man, Billy Burnham, who actually wrote Australiana and used to manage Ostentatious. I mean, he was huge. Those albums, I don't know how many he's made, but every one of them went platinum. I mean, like I said, the guy was a big success story. So yeah, there was a pecking order, but like there was a group of us that were sort of doing all right out of it and quite popular.
Yeah.
But I think there's a big thing of comedy, like particularly when someone's putting a show together, and you know, the pecking order is sort of. We always argue about who's going on in which order, because you don't want to open the show, you know. And sometimes,
where, like, if you're a comic, what's the sweet spot when you're doing shows and things like that? Is there one?
Well, the sweet spot is going on after someone who's crap. Seriously. So no one wanted to follow anyone who was really good. And like sometimes, and quite often this happens to myself, is that you've got to, when you're the feature act, you've got to go on at the end, or you've got to go on at the end of each half. So you're always paranoid about who will, you know, first question is, who's going on before me, you know? And if they're going really good, you can see the comic in the wing just go, come on, get off. How long has this guy been on? Come on, hey. Because they're really sucking the life out of the audience. So yeah, the pecking order was really noticeable there.
And I was doing some research about how different people deal with stress before they go up, and it seems like there's different categories for comedians. There's one that's the people that are the rockers. Yep. They rock back and forth physically. There's the leg twitchers, which you talked about. I call that the leg, right? And then there's the other ones that are the sweaters, where they just get drenched in sweat before they.
Mate, it gets much worse than that, Scott. I knew one guy who was. He was brilliant, but it affected him so bad that he had to. I mean, he would literally throw up seconds before he went on, and then he'd go out there and brain them. But like, yeah, I go a bit silent. I mean, like, if I was about to go on stage now, I mean, I could try and sort of pretend I'm having a conversation with you, but really I'm just thinking about what I'm going to say and how I'm going to open and get, Scott, you look like terrific riding on your bike there. And I think, okay, but I'd be taking very little in from you. That's kind of my thing. All sorts of reactions. I mean, it goes from like dread fear to, we used to play this horrible trick on all the young comics, and because like we'd have all these sort of start-up nights where, you know, people could come on and sort of have a go and get up and do 5 minutes, and they'd look up to you for advice. And this was an old trick. We were a pack of bastards, seriously. They said, oh, look, what's the best way to prepare? They said, listen, mate, just walk out on that stage, stare at the audience, and don't say anything. Just stare at them for a while. These poor bastards would go out and just go, and then they would just be like stunned mullets with nothing to say, and people would start throwing. It was a pretty low act, I got to say.
And I did some research on you earlier. I did a bit of internet stalking.
Yeah.
And I saw this great clip from 1986, I think it was, of you on Hey Hey It's Saturday.
Right.
But one thing I noticed was the hairstyle. Can you tell me a little bit, because it was about like this tall, tell me a little bit about that.
Mate, I used to get around in a flat. I've had shocking hair all my life. My hair just sticks up. So I used to cut it into a flat top, but it kind of went into a Renaissance and a Baroque and even a Rococo era where it sort of like got really long. And I had a sort of mullet at the back. It was the worst haircut. No, I look at it now, mate, and I can't believe I had the gall to leave the house. Seriously, it was pretty ugly. Well, we used to say the flat top was an aircraft carrier for mosquitoes.
Oh, beautiful. Because again, I'm a bit vertically challenged. So I've considered, maybe using that to buff it up somehow.
You can get a lot of height with the right hair, Scott.
Now, and I know that you went overseas and spent some time, I believe it was in New York.
I did, and in LA. I very fortunately, you might recall an Australian guy called Gordon Elliott. He used to host a show called Good Morning Australia on the 10 network. He went overseas. He became a pretty big time journalist and reporter over there for the Fox network. And he was a good friend of my manager's. And we went to New York one year and visited him and stayed with him. And I thought, look, I'm going to give this a crack. I came back the following year and I got spotted in some of the clubs by this MTV producer at an off-Broadway show. And he invited me to come in and audition for this. There was this great new role for the host of an MTV Tonight Show. They were doing a Tonight, and the Tonight Show had a live host and a recorded host, and they would cut between the two. And I did this audition, and which was pretty straight. And then he sort of left me in a room. He said, "Look, I'm going to walk out of here. You're in here, and just do something, whatever you like." And I did something incredibly weird. I used to do this routine called the Piranhas, which was like really weird and kind of messed with your head. And they just thought it was the strangest thing they'd ever seen. They just thought, this guy is from another planet. I got the gig, which was the most... So every comic in New York hated me. I'd only been in town like 3 weeks, and I'm hosting this national show on MTV. So, mate, I had a ball over there. I got to, I was working every night of the week, and I'd be sort of, when I wasn't MTV, I'd be working on stage in the Northeast, from Baltimore to Pennsylvania. And
that would have been massive. Like MTV back then would have just
was big.
Quite popular. What did you do to kind of keep your feet on the ground? Because I could see, as a young man, New York.
I was only 27 years of age when all that happened. It was unbelievable, mate. I thought, I could be a rock star here. This is unreal. I mean, people were recognizing me in the street in New York. I just thought it was absolutely amazing. The show tanked, I have to say. After 3 months, the show tragically just ran out of money. I mean, this was a show we would give stuff away, great stuff. I mean, we gave Harley Davidsons, and they gave away a house on the first episode. They gave away John Bon Jovi's house in New Jersey.
Right. So, like before Oprah, giving all that stuff away to people. To go.
But like by week 12, we were giving away tank tops and mugs.
Shit.
So it didn't last too long.
Wow. And how long did you spend in New York then?
Most of that year, and then I went back the following year and worked and lived in LA, which was a bit of a mistake. I mean, LA is kind of it's 900 suburbs looking for a city, but it didn't really have the soul of New York. New York is much better for stand-up comedy and in general. LA's kind of, and it was more cutthroat too, because people see it as a doorway to Hollywood. It's and the audition scene is very big there too. There's a lot of people competing and nudging you out of the way. I used to say it's like lowering a ladder into a pit of like 10,000 hungry animals, and everyone just fighting each other to try and get on that first rung. It's really I hated LA, to be honest with you, and that's your first mistake in LA. All the agents tell you, like, to make it here, you've got to say, I love LA, it's fantastic, I can't wait. But I never really got into it. It wasn't my scene.
Yeah. So where did you go from there? So you were in New York, then you went to LA?
Yeah, well, look, I was playing the clubs in LA. I wasn't getting anywhere, to be honest with you. So I thought, look, I got a pretty good life at home, and I was doing well at home. I thought I can always come back here. I'm only 27 at the time, so I thought, I can't. But things really took off for me at home. I got back that following year, and I got offered a pretty good gig on Channel 10. I was hosting a game show called Let's Make a Deal. So, like, I was getting some really good things happening, and I was still making plenty of appearances on the live circuit, and the corporate scene was really taking off there too. So quality of life just overtook me. I thought, I've got it pretty good. Do I really want to go back there and schlep it out again for another year? I said no. So sometimes I regret that decision. Sometimes I think a lot of the people I was friends with over there, Ray Romano and many others, went on to do like massive things and become huge stars. And I often think, oh God, if I just stuck it out a little bit longer. But mate, I'm happy. I can't complain. Well,
it sounds like you've had pretty amazing life. Because the other thing you did is you've done some writing. You're an author, and you also
writing. Yeah. I wrote today. Actually, I've got a column in the Daily Telegraph today about all this culture war stuff, these banning of old TV comedies and Gone with the Wind. I mean, that's just, who are they going to come for next, mate? I had a very strong opinion about this and this tearing down of statues. And those statues are there to remind us of how wrong we are. I think if you abolished Nazi Germany from history, we're inclined to make the same mistakes again. These things are reminders to us, and even though the comedy was bad then and offensive then, it says a lot about who we were and what we were thinking. So I think it's immoral and anti-artistic, and it's Taliban stuff. What's going on at the moment?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've got 3 kids, and we've been really talking about that as a family. About what does that really mean? They see statues, I think in America, of Christopher Columbus that have been torn down and all of that. And we had a great conversation about...
Is he not one of the great navigators in the world? What did he do? All he did was, he didn't kill anyone. He didn't oppress anyone. He just sailed across the Atlantic. Same with Captain Cook. People want to tear down Cook. Captain Cook was one of the great navigators in history. He didn't mistreat anyone. Don't get me started. There are a lot of idiots out there, and if you're watching and you believe that, you're an idiot. Seriously.
Here's what we'll put in the technical, the opinions of the people speaking, and not part of the publisher, right? But I want to go back to the writing, because you also did a movie.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that, because again, a lot of people would go, all right, yeah, comedian, yeah, he can do something funny, but is he more than that? And you are much more than that. Tell me a little bit about how that all came about.
Yeah, I've written several movies. Actually, one of them, the one you're referring to, was a documentary for about environmental sustainability, way ahead of its time. I think we made this thing in 1990, sort of like there were only a handful of people in the world who were talking about global warming at the time, or resource depletion. But it was a really interesting idea. Like, a guy came to me, the director came to me, and he had all this information from a UN study called the Brundtland Report, and he and I wrote a comical movie about it, which I played all 7 characters in this movie, and we shot it in India and Europe and parts of Australia. It was a fantastic achievement. And the film won plenty of awards. I got some awards too in Berlin and in New York. But I've written a feature film too, a film called Gino, which is about an architecture student who becomes a stand-up comic. Strange how people dwell on their past and draw from their experiences. Right. That was made in early 90s as well. That won the... there used to be this thing called the FFC, which was an annual chook raffle where the government would hand out millions of dollars to the best scripts, and I won it. We won $3.5 million worth of funding from the Film Finance Corporation, and this film got fully bankrolled. I really fell out with the filmmakers, and that, I mean, I'm very proud that my movie got made, but I've never seen it.
Right.
It was a really sort of bitter experience for me, but I have it in my credits. I wrote a movie. I wrote a FFC winning movie.
Well, when you said that, I just had that image of Hollywood and all the people pulling everybody else down, which is...
Yeah. Well, mate, it's a dirty business. It really is. And even when you write a film, mate, you have so little power. And, you know, if you really want full artistic control, write a book. You know, that's about... Because when money's involved and when other people are involved, you get pushed and pulled and hammered into situations you don't want to be in, and eventually you just got to walk away.
Yeah. So how do you actually kind of occupy your time now? I know you're MC, you speak, you do lots of different...
Yeah.
A bit about what you were doing, again, pre-COVID, around the world.
I'm trying to, look, pre-COVID, there's more work than I can do. There are basically these days, I probably do a couple of 100 of events a year, and some of them are just straight out shows, and some of them I'm hosting and entertaining at the same time. And I'm talking about any kind of event. I mean, political events, social events, fundraising events, corporate events, conferences, what have you. Fundraisers are a big part of my life. That's why I'm involved with Hands. But there's a half a dozen charities that I try and support. And I do little bits on TV, and I write occasionally as well. But it keeps me pretty busy. You'd be surprised. It's and it's very consistent too. So, but it's since COVID, I've been working with a couple of companies about translating the whole live experience into a streaming process, and we've actually built a studio in Mascot here in Sydney. We've got a full stage and video screen, and you know we can stream an event into thousands of homes. I did the Ray White National Awards a couple of weeks back into 1,200 homes in Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong, and a black tie event. We could interview the winners. It was doing the comedy's a little tough because I'm kind of in a room on my own, and I'm not getting the sort of like the applause and the sort of the energy from the room. But yeah, I'm coping with that as well. Look, I can't wait. These people think that that's going to be the future. They've put a lot of money and resources into developing this format, and they're going to do all their events that way. I tend to think that we'll get a fair chunk of the market back to what it used to be, and what I've always wanted to be, and that is just in front of an audience.
Yeah, that's right. I was talking to somebody, because again, I'm in the kind of the leadership education space, conferences as well. But somebody was explaining it. They said, well, we reckon it took 10 years off the delay to do the blended learning, where they do some online and some face-to-face. And I've been running some online masterclasses, but even we just debriefed one of them. They loved it, but everybody said, I can't wait to be face-to-face again. I think about that connection.
Absolutely. And look, some things will be very different when it all goes back to normal, whatever that's going to be. It's I mean, I use the example of the GFC back in 2008. I mean, when things resumed to a level of normalcy, a lot of people weren't there anymore. A lot of industries weren't there anymore. One whole part of the market just completely disappeared. Sports hospitality, which was huge in the early noughties, like I'm talking like big events, Bledisloe Cups, grand finals, Melbourne Cups, that sort of thing. There'd always be so much hospitality work, like big lunches, big dinners, entertainers, MC. I mean, Bledisloe Cup, you'd go to, the day before a match, and on the match day, you'd have 8 shows. I mean, it was so much. People were paying $1,500 a plate to go to a breakfast. It's that completely died. I mean, you go to a big event these days, and there might be one event leading up to it the day before, and they're flat out selling the seats at that. It's really weird. You can't pick what's going to be there and what's not going to be there anymore.
The changes and the shifts. So I want to find out, because you spent a lot of time traveling, probably similar to me, probably Platinum One with Qantas as well. What has...
That's been a big part of my life recently with with Hello World and the TV show. That's I absolutely love it. I mean, like to make people laugh and to travel and get paid for it. I mean, it really. I look back on the last 2 years and compared to this year, and it's like I was living a dream. I really can't believe. I mean, this time last year, for example, I was in Istanbul, like eating at some amazing restaurants, and then I went over to Greece and hopped around the islands, and I thought, and getting paid, and I thought, wow, this is a nice way to sort of see out your twilight years. This is, I hope this goes on forever. That's right. But that's all totally. I mean, the travel industry is on its knees. I can't see anyone's passport being stamped this year, unless maybe New Zealand, but that's going to take so long to recover. Domestic travel, yeah, that's going to be terrific. And, I've already been chatting with the Hello World people. That a lot of the TV stuff they're looking at doing now will be just New South Wales or Australia, or domestic travel is going to really explode. But yeah, that was a really fun part of my life that I'm missing big time.
So curious, where was your favorite destination? Like, you have been so many places around the world.
Yep.
What would have been one or two of your highlights?
Look, I absolutely love New York. Yeah. I absolutely love Florence. I just see Florence as... Look, in medieval times, in Renaissance times, Florence was just the absolute world leader in architecture, in art, in money. I mean, finance, the Medici family. It was the capital of the world. And when you go there, when you walk its streets, and you can just feel that this place was once... It was more New York than New York. I get an incredible... I spent some time there when I was a student. I lived in a little house there for the best part of a winter, and I just utterly fell in love with it. When we did the story for Hello World there last year, I'd forgotten how much I'd missed it. And of course, the food and the countryside, and you're making my head spin. I love Portofino in Italy too.
You take or kind of portray to me somebody who loves to eat as well.
Oh, now we're getting onto a subject I can talk about. I love food. I really do. I'm working on a food show at the moment, actually, with some producers.
What can you share? I know there's some things you can't, but
yeah.
The food.
Well, it's a show. The idea is that starts off like Seinfeld, where I'm on stage talking about a particular ethnicity or a particular event and their food. Like, for example, Greek Easter. So I'm on stage doing a routine about Greeks and their love of food. And then we meet a Greek family, all right? And we go to their home, and we meet the mum and the kids in the backyard and the whole catastrophe, and we talk about food and so forth. And then we follow them in their Easter preparations, like the cooking of the lamb and the fasting they do in the lead up. Or we go to the Greek service on Orthodox Sunday, and then we go back and we have this feast. But before everyone can eat, I have to get up and entertain them with a stand-up routine about them and the food.
Could be dangerous.
Well, that's right. And then it's up to them to invite me to stay or not.
So you may not even get to eat with them.
Yeah. So it's called Eat, Laugh, Stay.
Oh, beautiful. Brilliant. And it's funny that when you were saying that, one of the things that I find is people's culture, and they have different traditions, different ceremonies, different rituals that they pass on from generation to generation. Yeah. What I'm noticing, and you probably would too, is we're losing a lot of those rituals that were passed down and gave really strong meaning.
Absolutely. And food is a big part of that, Scott. Food is an easy way of passing that. We all like to eat, we all, but food carries culture.
Yeah.
So at all these, we've got a few events lined up. We want to do a Greek Easter, like a Chinese New Moon festival, a bar mitzvah, an Indian wedding. You can imagine the colour this is going to show us, and the food will be front and central, and I will do a bit of cooking with the mums and the rellos as well, because I do like to cook as well. So I can't wait for this show to get into production. It's going to be brilliant.
Sounds great. And tell me again about you personally, because I know you've got a family and some kids as well. What are some rituals that you might have with them? Because I'm always curious. We see people and they're out there, and what are some of the rituals that you might have with your family and your kids?
Yeah, that's interesting. We don't have a lot of rituals. I mean, I've got three. My kids are pretty young. My eldest is 16. She's at boarding school in Victoria, and I've got three boys at school here in Sydney. They're hooked on their games, mate. They're like a lot young, most sort of early teenage boys.
Yeah.
We talk about Julian Assange. I mean, one of my kids hasn't been outside since 2007.
That's good. That's good. Oops, sorry. Somebody else's phone is going off in the background. Because I think those rituals are important. Like I know our family, we always go camping at Easter.
Yep.
Kids were little.
Yeah. Well, we have some inherited Italian rituals from my side of the family. And, we do the tomato sauce every March. I mean, that's when the tomatoes are in season, and a few families will get together and we'll buy, like 1,000 crates of tomatoes, and we'll be there sort of bottling it and preserving it, and we live off that. I mean, we eat so much pasta and sauce, so I've got several hundred bottles downstairs, and I try to keep those things alive, like with my dad too. Like we did some olives a couple of weeks ago, so we bought all these cartons of Kalamata olives, and we nicked them all, and we preserved them in salt and oil and oregano. We've got some hot chilies. I've got some great olives. We used to do salamis and stuff with Dad as well, and when Mum was alive, there was so much more from the garden. We'd do sun-dried tomatoes and sun-dried eggplant, and got any sun-dried Aussies even. You can sun-dry anything, mate. It's no.
I can even see the energy, your smile.
Wine too. I mean, Dad's 88 now, so it's wine is a bit. We've made a lot of wine a few years back, and we've still got plenty to drink. Probably enough for another 10 years, but wine was a big part of it too. His wine's a little strong. I got to say, it's great for petrol strikes, but I tend to drink his wine in a sangria, like mixed with lemonade or so. It's you can't drink it straight. No smoking, no live flames within 100 yards, please.
Lose your eyebrows for sure.
Yeah.
Another question, again, with your traveling, I'm curious, your worst hotel experience. Because again, you would have been to all different types of hotels, and maybe even when you were first starting.
Yeah, mate, you're never immune from staying in a crap hotel. I've stayed in some dives, mate. Some of the early gigs I did in Queensland, I can remember, like staying in some trucking stop. Oh, actually, the worst.
All right, here we go.
I was on a comedy tour of the Northern Territory and the Pilbara, and we did a show out at Mount Newman, which is world's largest open cut mine, the biggest hole in the world. And we stayed in these things called SM. There's no hotels.
Right.
So you stay in an SMQ, single male quarter. And it's literally like, it's a shoebox, pretty much. It's like you can touch both walls. There's a single bed in there, somewhere to hang a shirt, and it is a TV mounted on the wall, and that's it. I mean, the loo's outside, and hot, mate. It was like you could bake a cake in there. It was that was pretty ordinary. That stands out.
And how many countries have you been to? Because it sounds like you've been to a lot. Have you ever done?
Hang on. With the hotels though, the worst thing about the crap hotels. I mean, most hotels are pretty good these days, but in the sort of 80s, I mean, particularly if you went to places like sort of Perth or Hobart, it's there wasn't this concept of service never really sort of, like Perth is still behind us in service, I reckon, but like in the 80s, but they, I should do something for you. Why? I was staying in a hotel in Hobart one time, and I was really hungry, and I rang for room service, and all I could hear was, "He said he wants room service." Then there was this fight, and someone else had grabbed the phone and go, "Room service." And I ordered a hamburger or something, and 4 hours later it arrived, and it, obviously from a shop down the road. I stood in the rapid. It was, yeah, great experiences.
Oh, wow. Wow. And tell me about some of the, how many countries have you been to?
I don't know. There's many more that I still want to go to, mate. I'm very keen to get to Mexico. I've been reading a lot about the places there and the food. That Rick Stein series in Mexico was absolutely. I've met Rick Stein a couple of times. He's a friend of a friend, and he's my idol. I mean, I asked my wife. I'm just a joke. I can virtually recite every episode of every Rick Stein series. I've got a man crush on that guy big time. And Anthony Bourdain too, my other favourite food critic, travel writer.
Yeah, and you hung out with some pretty cool people. I caught a little bit of the interview that Pete had with you, but that you and Tina Turner are like this. You're like
we were. I haven't seen it for a long time, but yeah, I did her 50th anniversary in showbiz party on the French Riviera. Yeah, that was great. Oh, mate, I've had a charmed life, mate. I've met some wonderful people, some great Australians, some people of power, and yeah, I'm a pretty lucky guy, very lucky guy.
And tell me about with the kids trying to pass on those messages, because I'm like, let me give you an example. We again, I've got the 3 kids, grew up in America, been in Australia for over 25 years. So I made a commitment a number of years ago to fly back to America for at least 2 weeks and just take one of my kids. So it's just them and me on our own, visiting my family and everything else. And I had plenty of frequent flyer points. So I made the mistake of using my frequent flyer points to upgrade us to business.
Ooh. Mm.
Because I remember my 12-year-old daughter at the time when we came back, she said, "I will never fly economy again."
That's it. You've made the bed, mate. Now you've got to sleep. But I mean,
let me tell you.
What are kids going to whinge about in the future? Oh, look, we didn't fly business class till I was 10. Look, it's just outrageous. I've made that mistake too. I made a mistake flying in premium economy, and then I made the mistake of flying in business class. And now it's every time I book a holiday, are we flying business? No. Ah. You just sitting. You're going to some exotic location the whole time. They're going, ah.
Yeah, and we don't have a lot of time left, Vince. But I want to ask you, because it seems like you have lived a pretty amazing life, and there would have been fears along the way and doubts. Give a couple of recommendations for people out there that are going, wow, if I want to do something different, what can I do? How do I actually convince myself to do it? Just like you did, trying some new things and even traveling overseas.
That's a really, really good question, Scott. And I do get asked that from time to time, because I'm in a job, mate, where really there's nothing. All I've got is my wits, really, and I'm sustaining a household of 6 people, and paying bills, and this is from someone who had a profession that they completely ignored. You've just got to believe in what you do. You've got to enjoy what you do. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, then do something else, because you won't be doing it very well if you don't enjoy it. I love what I do. I would do what I do if they paid me a quarter of or a tenth. Honestly, I'd still be doing it. I'd probably have to do a lot more of it, actually. But find something you really like to do, and everyone is very good at something. I honestly believe that, and have faith and keep trying. I mean, particularly I was very lucky in my biz that when I started, I didn't know what I was getting into. I'd never seen a stand-up comedy. I'd never been to a comedy show. I didn't know you could die on stage and be humiliated. I didn't know that. I think it's those that came after me sort of have that sort of incredible apprehension, that fear of dying. I was pretty innocent about it. And plus I had something else to do. So, you know, I thought, what the heck, if it doesn't work, I'll just go and design buildings. But yeah, have faith, have strength, and really love what you do. And that's my advice. And keep going. I mean, failure, this is one of my favourite quotes, success rather, is a measure of your ability to absorb failure. And you hear it so often in showbiz and in many other walks of life. You can't really get anywhere until you've sort of failed and until you've been knocked back and have given yourself more reason to go on.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Thanks for all of your help with hands.
Oh, don't thank me. You guys are doing all the hard work. I'm just sitting here talking shit. You guys are doing all the peddling. Thank you to everyone who's participating, and thank you to you, Scott. It's a privilege to be involved with you people. It's a great cause. I've seen firsthand what you do, and I'm with you whenever you need me.
Oh, thanks, Vince. We really appreciate it. I might hand over back to Emma to close us off. Everybody, again, it's a Friday. Enjoy your weekend. And again, enjoy some of those words of wisdom from Vince as well. And don't spoil your kids, right?
I love it. I feel like I picked up so many tips during that chat that I didn't know I was going to get. Guys, thank you so much. We've had feedback on our Zoom sessions that people just love the interviews like this because it means that they're not thinking about any of those pedals and any of the kilometers, and they're really enjoying them. And I know a lot of people are jumping on the recordings once we pop those up. So thanks again to both of you for giving up your time. And well done, everybody, for another 45-minute session. And make sure you go on and log your Ks on my virtual mission. You don't want to miss any of those Ks off the total. Have to go back and do them again. And of course, if you share any of the footage of your riding or anything, make sure you tag hands. We'd love to see them and share them. Lastly, tomorrow morning, if on Saturday you are dedicated enough to come and hang out with us, Claire's going to be doing a ride and music session so that you can pump out those Ks. And in the afternoon, Pete's going to have an interview with Dr. Ross Walker, who is an extremely interesting guy, and I really hope that you can log on and watch that. So for now, signing off for Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Vince, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.